going on, folks? My name's Eddie Carson, and you are here listening to Race Matters at WJOP LP 96.3 Joppa Radio. You can find this show on SoundCloud as well as on YouTube. And I'm here with a guest, and we're going to jump right into it. My guest here is Anna Yang. Anna, say hello to folks.
How are you doing, everyone? My name is Anna Yang. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm super excited to be here.
I love it, Anna. I love it. You know, we're going to talk about, Anna, a little bit about Anna's background. We're going to talk a little bit about the status of DEI and what does the status of DEI look like, particularly in a sense that there seems to be some turbulence with DEI these days. And of course, I couldn't have picked a better person to have this conversation with. Anna is versed. She leans into this work quite a bit. And it's something that really, and not to put words into your mouth because you can speak for yourself here at the microphone and everything, but it's something to say that you're passionate about. Anna, as we lean into this here a little bit, hey, tell us a little bit about your identity and where you're from.
Absolutely. So I'm Korean American. I'm also Korean international. I grew up in South Korea. I came to the state at the age of 16, knowing zero English.
Zero English?
Zero English.
Oh.
And as you guys can imagine, I've been experiencing ever since a lot of linguistic discrimination in this country. And I just really have this dream and hope to empower others who have a similar background and similar experience as me. And I think that's so important nowadays. I'm also excited to share my journey, that how I empower myself in what way specifically to that has been really helpful for my journey. And I think that's really important to really we encourage one another and empower one another. And I think part of my intersectionality that I have, being Asian, being also married to Chinese American, I have many lenses that within me that's not just within one lens. So I'm really excited when I'm meeting with any kind of person to really have a dive deeper conversation. So that's one of the things that I enjoy.
Anna, I mean, that's quite significant for the fact that you knew zero English at the age of 16, and you have a profound command of the English language right now. Tell me about your love for languages, and we were talking about this a little earlier. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
So I always love listening to pop song growing up. So I remember in 80s I've been listening to New Kids on the Block.
But please tell me you listen to a little bit of Prince and Michael Jackson.
Also, yes, definitely.
Okay, just checking. We got to bring those two folks in.
Yeah, definitely. So I mentioned those groups because they're also from Massachusetts. So that's first time I'm learning or listening to song that's different, that's not in Korean. And I just first learned the language through listening to the song. And I think I always had this passion for learning French, for example, or learning Spanish, or learning Mandarin. I'm not as a high level as my native tongue, of course, but I think something about the way they're communicating, their frequency, their fluency really excites me. So, and I think you can really understand the culture through having mastered this different language, and I think it's really important. For example, in Italian, they use this hand symbol a lot, right? I used to work with a lot of Italian colleagues, and then you really have to understand what that really means. So I think, certain culture really important. So talking about how we eat, in Asian culture, we use chopstick to eat food, and that's what that means in different culture is really unique. There's difference between like a Korean chopstick and chopstick from Japan. It's all the kind of different shape, and some chopsticks are flatter. Some chopsticks are actually round. So all of this interesting conversation that I engage when I was working with the students from like all age level is fascinating. So
I'm embarrassed to admit I had no idea that the chopsticks were different. I'm just happy I know how to use them. Although I'll admit,
Awesome.
I struggle when I'm, delving into rice with chopsticks, especially if it's not sticky rice.
Yeah.
It gets frustrating, and sometimes I just want to look around and just grab a spoon.
Right,
but
right.
I'm not going to do that. I'm trying to
Right.
enhance my own sensibilities in different ways. When you came here at 16, and you've had this passion for different people, different cultures, different backgrounds, all of those things that are there. What's the one thing that has excited you the most about thinking about diversity, thinking about the differences of people, and why you lean into this stuff?
So, to be frank, I was so unaware about diversity before I came to the States. So, as I mentioned before, I was born in South Korea in a small town, away from the big city. So I
So
grew
you
up
weren't
in a-
close to Seoul.
I was not. So I grew up with lots of chickens and roosters, and my grandparents were having all this like agriculture.
So you're a
cool-
country person.
Definitely, yes.
Okay.
And I moved to Seoul within my last 3 years before I moved to the States, and it's just different in terms of culture. But I think I always remain my root that I learned from my upbringing, which is be kind and be empathetic and be inquisitive, which is coming from my family. So as a child, I was always very curious about everything.
No, that's
Yeah.
it's interesting in thinking about your own background, and when we think about the racial makeup of South Korea is quite homogenous. When we think about that too, and when you came here, you join a collection of folks, such as myself. A recent word that has emerged over the last 6 years: BIPOC folks, or people of color. And what was that like for you? Being in a majority in South Korea, and then yet now being aligned with folks who don't have that dominant pattern, especially when it comes to racial characteristics that are here in the United States.
Right. So it's very interesting because this is like really excited about where I'm wearing all these different intersectionalities. Really interesting because I have different understanding of like a Korean American who were born and raised here, which is all of my cousins. So all of my cousins doesn't speak in Korean at all,
okay.
and I have, especially on the West Coast, I think I have a cousin on the East Coast who speak a little bit of Korean, but I have all of my Korean friends who still live in Korea, who their first language is Korean, and I grew up in South Korea, so all of my teachers and my friends all look like me. And then when I came to the States, and I went through high school and college, and when I first took a job at independent school, when my faculty and colleagues were talking about LGBTQ, BIPOC faculty, people of color conference, and one of my colleagues asked me, I think I shared with you before, do you identify as people of color? I was very confused.
about that word and
all
and
these
people
terms.
of color, all of these
All of
terminology.
those terms, I was just completely lost.
Yes.
So I was basically still learning at that stage. At age like 25, I was still very interested in learning more. And I think I was fortunate that I was working in French school that they care a lot about these topics and we are very intentional about. So I think I really fell in love with learning more. I also definitely helpful that now my spouse is DI director. So I think we had a lot of different conversation. We move around different state. We were in Massachusetts before, now we're in Philadelphia before, and then we moved back. So I think a lot of these different topics that we are kind of learning about is really different. But then I think my understanding is that there's a lot of kind of different understanding that most people just have all these stereotypes. So I think that's something that I'm very intentional about educating folks, and also, willing to have any kind of conversation, because I think when we thinking about where these stereotypes coming from, I think it's really interesting. And I think a lot of people also have fear of being basically like having wrong assumption or not knowing enough. So any kind of, we talk a little bit about the state of DI right now. I think a lot of conservative folks are thinking about DI as taking power away, like my power away from me. But that's not the case. But I think there's a lot of basically different understanding of DEI. Like, are we actually really thinking about DEI? Like, where we want to go from? I think it's a really important thing to discuss. And, as school leaders or parents and, any kind of field.
Do you think that, you mentioned when you talk about the state of DEI and where we're headed, that there are a population of folks who are worried that they're losing power, and they won't say this. They will say, well, we should operate and we should pretend that we're colorblind. I should not see you for who you are as a South Korean woman, but I should just see you as another person. You shouldn't see me as a black man. We shouldn't really worry about this mythical thing of queerness, of transness, of gayness, right? And these are the things that happen here. And a lot of that has created a lot of consternation, particularly for the fact that a lot of folks, particularly white Americans, do not think that this has merit. Even in places that profess that DEI and diversity is important, they come up short in living that out. How do you respond to that commentary?
Well, I think my entire life I've been experiencing microaggression and linguistic discrimination, or some kind of subtle way or direct way. And I have witnessed lots of people that I know who's not born in this country, who came as immigrants, or whose English is not their first language, or they don't have a European accent. They have a similar experience, and most of those folks, they are afraid to speak up, and there's a silence. And I think I used to be one of them. So I think in the earlier stage when I first came here, I also felt that I don't deserve a certain seat on the table. I don't have to go for certain jobs. And just to be specific, when I was in undergrad, I was applying and looking for a master's program that where I want to apply. So I was interested in applying to Teachers College Columbia because they have a great education program. And one of my professors told me that he doesn't believe in me that he will get in.
He didn't believe that you could get into Columbia University, like where you went.
Yes, so he specifically told me that don't apply, you'll never get in.
But why? And out of curiosity, what was the racial background of this professor?
This professor was white professor.
A white professor. I mean, I had to ask. You're right.
Yeah.
I had thought about that.
So
I'm sorry, but did he believe you couldn't get in because of your racial and ethnic background?
Back then, I didn't ask why, but I witnessed another similar experience in the classroom by the same white professor, and then this classmate also shared with me about more detail after that class, which is that she and I are only students of color in the whole classroom, and she was this black student. And I remember that she also felt kind of discrimination toward her grade, and how there's some kind of unfairness into how her final grade that kind of add up. So she shared with me the more detail afterwards, but yeah, I think I kind of sense between how they're interacting in the classroom. I think everyone in that classroom, we all kind of witnessed that. Certain kind of like not being so above and beyond to reach out to her question when she asked questions versus other students. So I kind of noticed all this kind of subtle way of microaggression towards this specific student as well. But when he mentioned it to me, I didn't ask why. So I was just silent. But I went ahead and applied, and I got in.
You know, it's interesting because, you know, I think there are a lot of folks, particularly people of color, you can ask about their different experiences, the microaggressions that they've experienced, or even beyond the microaggression, just the direct racial animus aimed at them because of their background. Now, I had a situation once where I took a class, and I had this professor who I was taking this in a different department, so I wasn't like in a English or history department. You know, those are the departments that folks knew me quite well. You know, I wrote an outstanding paper. It was a quantitative paper, which I don't do a lot of quantitative papers. And so I show up to pick up my paper at her office one day, and she left them out in a box. And mine wasn't there, but there was a note for me that said, "See me." And so I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And she said, "Well, you know, I want to talk to you about your paper." "Yeah, absolutely." You know, storming in there. She's about to give me high praise. It's the best paper in the class, all that stuff. And she told me that the paper was too good. She insinuated that I plagiarized the paper. And I sat there, and I remember asking her to this day, because I knew exactly where she was going. You get around folks, and especially when we talk about the status of DEI, when folks are hiring, there's this element where folks don't always think we're good enough, or are we a diversity hire, right? And then even if those who want to commit to DEI, they're hesitant to go full on because they have a population of constituents who also hold those suspicions. So I remember I told her, or I asked her, I said, "Well, you know, my bibliography is attached to the paper. Did you even take time to follow up, right? You know, if I think a student is plagiarized, the first thing, the thing I'm not going to do is approach that student and say, I think you plagiarized your paper." And another thing is, and I'll admit, my ego got away from it. You don't know who I am? You need to go talk to folks about my work and who I am. Trust me on that. And that seems to be the experience that people of color have, and certainly, you know, you've had that. Thinking about, you know, talking about the linguistic aspects, your professor who did that. Do you think we're at the end of DEI, or we're just starting? And I say that when you think about the political elements that are happening here, and let's just be honest, CEOs and leaders of schools and colleges and hospitals and institutions are white men who are constantly threatened by notions of this. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I'm not sure. I think because I've been working in education sector for past 19 years in both public and private, I think I am the more aware of where I work. So I think, especially in private school setting, I think it's very challenging because when you look at the history of how private schools were funded, you know, I think there's data right there. So
for the fact that private or independent schools, a lot of schools especially in New England, we're not created for people who look like us or
Right.
students or all that stuff. Absolutely.
Right. And I do basically want to make a point that a lot of school they are making effort. So I'm not saying that there's no school are making effort, and because I do have seen that they're actually intentional about making the effort intentional, and they're really thinking about how we hire and how we retaining and how we support, and those are really wonderful example. But we do have dozens of schools that who it's more than dozen that who actually are not really thinking intentional about, and I think that's also include parent as well. So I think when basically we have this system that parents, faculty, and board members and leaders, like we are all kind of like has to be on the same boat. But if we're not really on the same level, same page, then it's going to be really challenging. And I think on the note of empowering others and the challenge that I had faced, I think throughout my whole life, I was always had very often experienced like people say things to me that, oh, you're not going to get there or don't apply. But then I decided that I think there's difference between you wanted to do something, then you're deciding to do something. So ever since that moment of challenges, I always thought of myself that, okay, in this moment, I do have a control over there's certain things. I don't have a control over that person's, what they're going to say to me, but
Right.
what kind of control do I have? So I was reflecting on it, and I decided that I will use those experiences that I had to empower others. And I do believe the power in it and beauty in it, which is why I'm here. And I think it's really important that we really encourage each other. I'm here to not block other people's dream, or you should not go for that route because of XYZ. But I think I was here and I was able to push myself all the way here because I believe that I have a voice, and I would like to bring my authentic myself and empower others. And that's how I actually met a lot of my mentors and friends who also supports me and encourages me. So including you. So I think it's been
Thank you.
really wonderful. And I want to just encourage those folks who's listening to this to speak up and share yourself in an authentic way.
I love that. I appreciate that message. Folks, if you're just chiming in, you're listening to Race Matters here at WJOP 96.3. I'm here with the brilliant Anna Yang, who is offering a lot of prolific commentary, particularly when it comes to identity and DEI. All of that stuff is on the table. So I got to ask this question. Mm-hmm. All right, and I always ask folks this question, and it's an interesting question, particularly because you come from a monolithic background, right? I'm thinking about South Korea. When did you become aware of the fact that you are Asian? When did it dawn on you that you're Asian?
To be honest, that's really, I wasn't even thinking that at all, just to be really transparent. I think when I came here, I think a lot of Asian folks listening to this, they can resonate with this. I think when I first came to the States, I heard the term Chino. Some folks were yelling at me from their car when I was walking.
Ah, okay.
And
yep.
I went back to my brother and asked, what's Chino? I was confused. That's me, basically, a few weeks in, came to the States. So just a lot of, coming from also teachers or neighbors or people I met at the store, so unaware, definitely not aware the difference between like Korea or like when I mention Korea, they all assume that I'm from North Korea.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. So like they're so
I
worried
mean,
about.
how often are you going to meet someone in the U.S. from North Korea and someone assumes you're from North Korea?
I'm not joking. So like when I first arrived, when I mentioned the word Korea, they were so worried. Their face is like so worried. Are you gonna be okay? Your family's gonna be okay in Korea? And then I told them, you know, that I'm from South Korea and not North Korea. And they're still worried. This still continues, by the way. I'm still experiencing this. This is not like done and they never kind of discussed. This is still, we still hear it.
I wish I could say, oh, I'm shocked or whatever, but I'm nowhere near shocked nor stunned. I mean, I'm just going to say, and this is going to come across as elitist and pretentious on my part, but I mean, a lot of folks don't know where Korea is. Mm-hmm. A lot of folks don't know that Korea is a peninsula, for example. Nor do they understand, nor the dark history Korea has, particularly with Japan, in terms of colonialism and occupation. That's there too. And so, I'm not surprised to hear that. I'm surprised that most folks don't ask if you are Chinese.
I hear that too, but I think a lot of times what I've been thinking and experiencing is that the media and basically TV and all these like Hollywood themes that people are familiar with, they're kind of matching that with when they see any kind of Asian folks walking around. So that's what I've been experiencing it, and I just think that in terms of DEI, where we start and how we go from here, I think it's really important to really thinking about like I think I told you this many times, like I don't know all the answers, I'm not expert in DEI, but I think willingness to learn, like I think it's all about like, are you intentional about this? Like yes. I think that's the start, and I think a lot of unfortunately institution or folks are lacking that. So it's not like we're thinking about DEI. It's not about removing someone's power. It's not kind of disrupting the whole system. I think there's a lot of schools or parents or some institution are worrying about. Like is they gonna disrupt what we already built, like academic excellence, for example. But this is nothing to do with diminishing any of excellence that we already have. You and I both know that. But I think that's where the fear is coming from. But I think that it's really important to have I'm actually really intentional about learning more about Asian culture. So I'm here to talk. So during pandemic, ever since George Floyd, a lot of people got a text. I think it's or Atlanta shooting, a lot of people text, but it's not about just actually basically. I want to help, I want to just do DEI, but actually, what are you doing in your own time, in your own free time? Are you actually spending time thinking about this and learning about this? I think that's important, and it's a good start. So I think a lot of basically times are not spending on that, and it's not gonna really get to the next level when we don't have a group of people actually devoted to that.
I was having a conversation with a colleague and another institution, and his colleague stated that they were not convinced that most folks, just in general, regular folks, are interested in really exploring and curious about differences and the power of diversity, creating a more equitable and inclusive society. But yet a lot of folks kind of lean in to their own little bubble. And we mentioned earlier that when that bubble is somewhat threatened, then people retaliate, right? They kind of retreat in a way, then they retaliate because they see it as a threat to their own being and everything too, which I find that interesting, right? To your commentary earlier, that people have to make a decision. How do they raise their children, right? You have a little kid, what kind of books and environments and what do you surround them with? And does that memory right, look exactly like the kind of memory you're trying to create? Or are folks so thirsty, right, to just learn more and explore more, and I gotta be honest, I craft relationships, and they're authentic and they're real. But for me, I have to work at it because, let's just be honest, we're in the North Shore. And the North Shore, it's diverse enough if you go look for folks who are different from you, but you got to work at really creating those relationships. And that's kind of been my experience. So I don't know if you agree with that, and with my colleague said that most people don't want to do enough, but maybe you say, I think people are leaning into this more.
I think it's all case by study, in my opinion. I think a lot of times it's less said, basically. I think you can tell a lot about like how that certain individual is interacting with you, and not even a single word being said. The way that the person look at you, or as soon as you're the only non-white folks entering to the room, how that specific individual interact with you. I think there's that. So, and young children pick up that too. And I remember one of my former school and my my students' parents that I was having conversation with, these black students and his father. We were having conversation at the playground, and I remember that early on he had this conversation about what it's like to be the only non-white kid in the playground, and it's really powerful to be in that room and listening to his father talking about this, and I could really resonate with any aspect. And I think it's obviously a lot of times people who's never walk in your shoes, who never walk in my shoes, can interpret as this is not like we're not really not thinking about DEI. We care about DEI and we want to make inclusive space, but it doesn't mean that we don't care, but we just don't know how to get there. But I've been hearing a lot of comments like that too, but I think a lot of times that I think it's also coming from what have you been doing to actually show dedication, or dedicating to DEI, besides approaching you or me and then ask questions. I think I'm not saying that I don't basically appreciate when people ask me questions. I do like to have a conversation, but then it's also coming from your heart and where your heart lies in. So for example, like when I was working at school in Philadelphia, like I was so unaware a lot of things in Black culture. I admit that I was learning a lot, and I was really fascinated, about
Black culture is quite fascinating, I must admit.
No, I mean like in terms of like how the hair, like how in terms of like people can be basically like touching your hair for no reason, all of that. Like
we talk for days on those stories.
Yes. So I heard from my like colleagues who shared all these stories. So like I think it's really important to be aware that those kind of different different culture, and they were willing to learn more. It's really important.
I mean, and that's it. You referenced George Floyd earlier, and I remember, we were supposedly we're going through this racial reckoning. Everyone's reading different books and leaning in, wanting to know about differences and everything too. And there was an article in the New York Times today about Ibram X. Kendi, author, as you know, How to Be an Anti-Racist. And the article really talked about really the backlash to that racial reckoning, how folks got to a point where they're fatigued and don't want to read anymore. They don't want to talk about DEI, and that's where we are. I have, and I've shared this with you, and we'll talk a little bit more offline about this too, about a paper, article titled The End of DEI, where there's some folks who believe that every time you take 2 steps forward after George Floyd, you take a step back. And that step back is really conducted in a sense that, well, you learn that people get fatigued and don't care about DEI the way maybe I do or you do or other people, and its value is in its importance to everything too. I find this notion frightening in many ways, where DEI may be on a retreat.
Well, the way that I'm thinking is that it can be, I'm not white, so I cannot really, speak for like white people, how they perceive it, because I don't think it's fair. But like what I've been observing and witnessing is that, a lot of schools or institutions have a DEI initiative, and they have like DEI director, they have like faculty of color, affinity groups, and all of that. But I've been hearing stories that to white folks, they can create fear. Like, where do they go? Why they have to meet all these questions that, like, because they're not basically on the same page of DEI. So I think those are also kind of need to be kind of filled in and educating them, like what's the purpose of this affinity group, like why are we meeting, kind of be really clear, like, and not just, I don't think it's a DEI director job. There's another misunderstanding I've been hearing, and then I've been witnessing a lot, that it's not DEI director's job to really only thinking about DEI. It's everyone's job. And I think that's also another notion that a lot of folks are confused about. And, I think that goes from there as well. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and I would even say, just thinking about, the idea that, I was listening to another podcast where someone said you're engaging in racism by asking people to segregate themselves based off their racial demographic and background to talk about their own identity. And it's interesting because these are the conversations that are happening. And I sat there and I thought, well, that's not true, right? Folks really need to kind of understand themselves as they engage with other folks who may be different from who they are. And you're the perfect person to ask this question, and that's this. When you first arrived to the U.S., as a 16-year-old, and you're learning the language and you're figuring out these things too, did you find yourself naturally gravitating towards folks who look like you, folks who are different? What was that experience like for you?
I think I'm definitely not representing all Asian for sure, because a lot of my friends who's Asian also told me that I'm very unique in that sense. So I think in my high school, there's a group of Asian students. They only hang out with each other, and I was definitely not one of them. And there's also a group of white students are all in like football, cheerleader team. They all sit together.
Yeah, it's typical traditional American high school image. Yeah,
right. And then I got invited both, but I wasn't part of any of those groups. And there was a groups of students who are just kind of like, who are they? I was one of them basically.
Yes.
Sometimes like when hey, you wanna join us for lunch? I say, like, okay, but then I went there one time and then I was like, okay, that's enough. I didn't go back. I think just me just also trying to figure out like who I am, also important. And I think it takes courage to be that. It's definitely not easy pathway. I think a lot of my friends were actually helping me with the language, or my Black students, my Black friends. And I remember that when I first came, like they even I used to like always have my hair off, and then my classmate, my friends in my class, like who's Black, she helped me with the hair. she kind of like transformation, hair transformation. Like, and then next day I put my hair down. Everybody was like, "Oh my god!"
Boy.
So it's just kind of, I took it as like very kind and caring gesture. It was not just about hair.
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of like, wow, like this person actually care about me.
I
And
love that.
you know what I mean? It's like a deeper friendship. It's not just about like being cliquey with one another. I mean, in high school, like, right? It's just so easy to do that. But I think that was my experience. And then I always like trying to focus on what I can take it from here to my next level. So in, you know, like in college, like those story that I shared with you earlier, some professor did not believe me. Oh, don't apply here, you're not gonna get in. But I always thinking about this importance of a positive mindset. I think that's another thing that I am, when I'm coaching and mentoring some of the women and women of color, I always emphasize that, because I think that's really powerful and a powerful tool that helped me to get to where I am so far. And it's been really meaningful because it can go all the way to, you know, here, if you keep thinking like the injustice or system you cannot change, the people who have power over you, then it's like you can feel discouraged and feel like you can't really do anything. But then I always feel that I do have hopes and dreams that someday that those people who feel discouraged, they will speak up and rise up. And I always say, basically, I had this challenge, I rise up. I did this challenge, I did not give in, rise up. I had this challenge, I rise up. Because until I get to the point, it's basically like a over and here in the mountain. Until actually I'm only gonna give up when I decided that I want to. Not because other people tells me that you should not do this. So that's the motto that I share with a lot of women. I think there's a lot of also tension between woman supporting another woman, and I've experienced that too. And a lot of my woman friends, female friends, share that journey in any kind of field, whether it's tech or education. They share that with me, that they feel the same way. I think it's also coming from a lot of like, you know, I got there, I work hard. Why should I help you to be a easier route for you? But for me, I don't really believe in that, because like I think that's such an important aspect of how we empower others is really meaningful and caring, because my belief is that I don't have to get to where I want to by not helping others. I can still get there but with helping others. And I have lots of mentors who's also actually helping other women, and she's a woman too. So I think that's just really heartwarming whenever that happens. So I just want to encourage a lot of women to also do so, and I think it's really meaningful. Folks, especially in North Shore.
Especially in the North Shore.
Yeah.
Folks, you're listening to Race Matters. I'm Eddie Carson. I'm here with Anna Yang at WJOPLP 96.3 Joppa Radio. And I appreciate y'all chiming in. As you just heard, a really thoughtful conversation from my friend, my colleague, and someone who is just doing amazing stuff, leaning into what I call radical love. And I'm all about that radical love and the justices the world needs and everything. Until next time, folks, thank you.